In the previous lesson, we learned how we can watch for the global state changes and rebuild the widgets to reflect changes. So in this lesson, we will be working on updating the global state data so that any consumer tracking global state gets the update. Alright? Now as this theme provider can be accessed by any widget in our widget tree, I'll be working on the settings screen for illustrating how state update works. This file has few codes, so it will be easy to understand, and later we'll be working on theme switcher widget. So here I'll be creating two widgets. First the elevated button with anonymous function in this onPressed, and child with text widget update global state value. And another child will be the text widget with text hello, which will be the consumer of global state. Alright. So what I want to do now is that when this button is clicked, I want to update the global state and see if I can get the update in this text widget. So for that, let's move into this theme provider and create a new string variable. And now I want this text widget to be a consumer of this variable. So for that, let's move into the settings screen, and first we'll be getting the provider in the build method. So var theme provider equals to provider.of context and pass the theme provider over here. So now we have access to this theme provider, so let's replace this text with theme provider.data to update. And here you can see that we are getting the variable value in this text widget. So now I need to change or update this global state value from this onPressed of elevated button. Alright. Now to update the global state variable, you can't simply just access the class and update the variable value like so. So if I do this and click this button, nothing happens because it's only updating the value for this instance and not for the global state. And you can't just simply access this theme provider variable and update the value like so. This will also not work. So how can we update the global state variable? For that, we need to create an updater function in this provider that updates the variable value, and this is how we can do it. So let me create an updater function over here. So void update string data, and this function will have string data as required argument. Alright. And when this function is called, we will update the variable of the state to the data that is passed into this function. So data to update equals to data from this function. So now the most important thing is to notify all the consumers about the state update, and we can do that by calling this notify listeners function. Alright. It's a function provided by this change notifier class. If I do not extend this change notifier class, I can no longer use this notify listeners. So this notify listeners depend on this change notifier class. Alright. This notify listener is like a set state but for the global variables. This function will notify all consumer about the update of state. So instead of directly updating the variable data from theme provider, we will call the updater function that we just created, which will then update the value of the state and notify all consumers about the state change. So theme provider.update string data, and this data argument will have the string that needs to be updated. So now if I click this button, then global state variable is updated and all consumers are notified about the update. So now we know how we can update the state data, so let's use this knowledge on theme switcher. This code here was only for the learning purpose, so let's remove it. So now let's move into this theme switcher, and first thing to do here is to get the theme provider in build method. Now move into the switch widget on change, and here we'll be updating the boolean variable value of theme provider. So theme provider dot, and we do not have this updater function of this boolean value, so let's move into this theme provider, and here we no longer need this string, so let's remove it and change this function name to update mode, and required data will be a boolean with variable name dark mode. Alright, and this function will update the state variable with the dark mode data from the function. So let's move into this theme switcher again, and here theme provider dot update mode, and this dark mode is equal to the value of the switch widget. Alright, so this will now update the global state according to the widget value. So now if I switch this, entire theme of our app is updated because global state boolean value is being updated by the switch widget, and consumer of material app is watching for the change and updating the theme accordingly. So now let's remove this boolean from here because we will only be using the provider value for managing state in this widget. Alright. So the default value of the switch widget is now the provider value. So theme provider dot is dark mode checked. And now let's remove this. and let's use provider value here as well. So now we have fully functional theme switcher in our app, which is powered by provider's global state management. So now we have a minor issue in our app. If we restart the app, theme data will be resetted to default value because global state is only preserved until the app runs. And if we need to preserve the data, we need to save it using local storage. So in the next lesson, we will be working on preserving data for theme mode. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we will be working on preserving theme mode so that when app restarts, it starts with the set theme mode. So in this theme provider, you can see that this boolean value is set to true, right? And as the global state does not return value after hot restart, even if I change this theme to light mode and hot restart the app, I still get the dark mode. This issue lies in the fact that global state does not retain data after hot restart. Global state is only applicable during runtime, alright? So when the app was restarted, this default value was used, so we have this dark theme activated. To overcome this limitation and ensure that our chosen theme persists, we will leverage local storage. Now before that, let's move into this theme switcher, and here I don't need to use the set state because state on this page is managed by global state, alright? I forgot it to remove in the previous lesson, so let's remove it now. And for preserving the data locally, we will be using the set preferences package, so let's install it in our Flutter project. Once installed, hard restart the app and start debugging. So now let's move into this theme provider and import set preferences package here. So let's bring up the code for writing data, copy it and paste it over here. And as this is using await statement, functions should be of async type. So when the mode is updated, I want to save this updated boolean value, so use prefs, which is the instance of set preferences dot set bool. So let me set this key to variable name, and value in this key will be the value in the dark mode variable of function. So now whenever the mode is switched, data is preserved in this key on local storage, alright? So now let me remove all these comments and unnecessary spaces. So now if I switch this to light mode, false value is saved in the local storage on is dark mode checked key, alright? So now I'll create another function here for loading the mode from saved data and updating the global state. So void load mode, and now get the instance of the set preferences over here. Change this function to async, and now update this global state variable with the data from local storage. So is dark mode checked equals to prefs.getBool, and the key is dark mode checked. And if this does not exist, fall back to true, meaning apply dark mode by default. And now to notify all the consumers watching for this variable change, use notifier listeners over here. So now whenever this load mode function is called, this function will get the saved value and update the mode. So now let's move into this main.dart file, and even before our material app is built, we need to run load mode from provider so that value in provider is updated according to the saved data, and then the material app can get the updated mode and set theme accordingly, alright? And as we need to trigger load mode from provider even before the build widget, we will be using init state over here. So now let's bring up this provider on this init state and then call this load mode function from here. But if I save the code and hot restart the app, then I'll be getting an error. And this error has been triggered because we are trying to assess the context even before the build method is executed. So if you want to call the function of a provider from outside of the build method, then you need to pass this listen argument and set it to false. So whenever you want to call the function of the provider, and if you want to do it from outside of the build method, make sure you do this, alright? So now if I change this theme to light mode and restart the app, I'll be getting light mode, and if I switch this to dark mode, I'll be getting dark mode on the restart. So now we have a fully functional fun facts app, and with the knowledge you have acquired up to this point, you can make a lot of improvements in this app. So this is the end of our fun facts app, and I hope you have learned a lot of cool things here. So that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you at the next section. Welcome to the exciting journey of global chat. In this app, we'll be stepping into the world of full stack development through Firebase. In global chat app, we have got Firebase Authentication. Users can log in, create account, and then dive into multiple chat rooms to connect and chat with others. In the development of this app, first up we'll explore Firebase, which is like a superpower behind our app. We'll get to the hang of Firebase authentication, making our app secure, and then we'll dive into Firebase database where things get interesting with real-time updates, making our app more dynamic. Then we'll have fun with chat rooms, sending messages and all that cool stuff. Plus, you'll become a pro at managing data in database with CRUD operations. It might sound fancy, but it's like adding, editing and deleting stuff, super useful. But wait, there's even more exciting stuff waiting for us in the learning adventure. Get ready to make global chat awesome and become a Firebase wizard. In this lesson, we'll set up our Flutter project global chat and then we'll set up Firebase project for it. So let's get started. So navigate into the Flutter project directory, open up terminal or command prompt and let's create a new project. So Flutter, create, app name will be the global chat --org company.dummy apps. Once the project has been set up, let's open this project in our VS Code. Open up the directory, open up terminal or command prompt and then code dot. So once the project has been set up, we need to set up Firebase for this project. So navigate into the Firebase console and now we'll be creating a new project. We could use this project, but this project is for the API, so let's create a new project. And you can name your project anything, it does not matter. Alright, click at continue and we do not need this Google Analytics, so disable it and then create a project. So now click at continue and then you'll be forwarded to the new project. And now we need to assign our Flutter app to this Firebase project, so click at this Flutter icon. So here we'll be getting some instruction for setting up Firebase in our Flutter app. So the first step is installing this Firebase CLI, so click at it and then you will be forwarded to Firebase CLI installation guide. At first we'll be working on installing Firebase CLI on Windows and then we'll be moving forward with the Mac OS as well. So click at this Windows button and then we'll be using npm for installing this Firebase CLI, and for that we need this Node.js. So open in new tab and download the latest version of Node.js. We are only installing Node.js for the npm command, alright? We do not use this Node.js in our Flutter project. So click at this LTS version and this will download the latest version of Node.js. Once the download has been completed, you can go ahead and install Node.js on your device. Accept the terms, click at next. You do not need to change this directory. You do not need to make any changes here. And then you can check this automatically install necessary tools. Alright, click at next and then install the Node.js. So now we need to verify the Node.js installation. For that, open up the command prompt and type node space -- version. So if you get the Node.js version, then your installation of Node.js is successful. And now we can run the npm command. So switch to the npm tab and then there is a command over here, copy it and paste it in the terminal. This command will install Firebase CLI into our system. Once these Firebase tools are installed, close the command prompt, open command prompt again and then type Firebase -- version. Now if you get the version over here, then your Firebase installation is successful. And if not, if you are getting an error, you can Google the error and get the fixes, alright? So now let's see how we can install Firebase CLI in Mac OS. So click at Mac OS and then we'll be using this automatic install script. So if you scroll a little bit, in this auto install script, you have this command, copy this command and paste it in your terminal. And this will install Firebase tool. You may be required to enter the password. And this is how you install Firebase tools in Mac OS. Nothing else needs to be done. And now this part is for both Mac OS and Windows. Alright. So scroll a little bit and you'll get this command Firebase login. So copy it and paste it in your terminal or command prompt. This Firebase login command will now try to authenticate our Firebase account into our device. Alright. So if you are getting this message, then everything is working fine. But if you are getting an error over here, then Google for that error and you'll get the fixes. So now Firebase is asking for the permission for data collection. Press Y and this will open up the Google sign in page. Alright. Select your account in which you have a Firebase project. Continue. Provide all the permissions. And now our device is connected to the Firebase account. So now let's navigate into the docs. And let's use this command. So copy this and paste it in your terminal or command prompt, alright? So this will list the project in our Firebase account that was logged in previously. So we have these two projects over here, so everything is working fine. So now let's move into this console page and click at next. So now we need to enable Flutterfire in our device. Flutterfire is a command that will install all the necessary tool for the Firebase project, alright? So copy this code and paste it in your terminal or command prompt. So when this is installed, you might be getting this warning, and this is different in Windows and Mac OS. Let's first have a look at the Windows fix, and then we'll be moving towards Mac OS as well. So in Windows devices, you will get a warning saying that the pop path is missing in our environment path. So copy this path and now press Windows and then search for environment variables. Click at environment variables, double click at this path, new, and then paste your path over here. OK, press OK, and then you can close this. And in Mac OS, you will be getting the same type of error but a different command. So copy this command and then paste it in the terminal. So now we have Firebase CLI ready in Windows and Mac OS devices. Alright. So now this part is for both Windows and Mac OS. So open up your terminal or command prompt and let's verify the Flutter Fire installation. So type Flutter Fire space -- and version. If you are getting this version, then Flutter Fire is working fine in our system. But if you are getting an error over here, then Google for that error and get the fixes. This is mandatory for installing Firebase in our Flutter project. So now we are ready for installing Firebase into our Flutter project. So navigate into the Flutter project, click at View, Terminal. So you can open up the terminal and type Flutter Fire space configure. This command will configure or set up Firebase for this Flutter project. So here I will be getting the projects in my Firebase account and I can use arrow keys for selecting the project. So enter. So now Firebase will ask me the target devices for my Flutter app. Currently we are only building for Android and iOS devices. So use the arrow keys and press space to check or uncheck these values. Alright. So I am not building this app for Mac OS and web. So space and make sure that this Android and iOS is only checked. So now press enter. And now this will configure Firebase into our Flutter project. Alright. And this might take some time. So once this is done, Firebase has been configured in our Flutter project. And to verify this, you can move into this Android folder, into the app, and you can see this Google services.json file over here. This file is the configuration of the Firebase project. Alright. So you can also verify this by moving into this iOS folder. And here you can see this Firebase app id.json. This is also a configuration but for iOS. Alright. So now we are getting some error in our lib folder. So navigate into this folder and this Firebase options is automatically created and we have an error over here. This is due to dependency missing. So in terminal type flutter pub add Firebase_core. This will install Firebase core dependencies required for this project. Alright. Once this is done, we have installed all the necessary dependencies and there is no longer error in our Firebase options. Alright. So now Firebase has been successfully configured in our Flutter project. To verify this, move into Firebase console and refresh the project. And if you scroll a little bit, you can see that there are 2 apps added in our Firebase project. Click at this project settings and you can see these apps here as well. So we have successfully configured Firebase project into the Flutter project. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be working on initializing Firebase and using Firebase in our project. So I'll see you at the next lesson.